way I don't miss any of the first part in the flurry.
Nice, Chief. That sounds good.
It's nice to see everyone in person, but I'm especially excited to see Janet Kraft because I haven't seen her for a while in person.
Yeah. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Janet.
Yeah.
There's Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I was rushing to get here.
I see Josh and Lindsay out there, and imagine they'll come in.
They gotta be coming.
Oh. That happens.
No. I heard George's voice.
Hmm?
I heard George's voice.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
What?
Oh, my wife's coming.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. You're right. The way the tables are set up,
Yeah, because usually the tables
they're
are,
long that way.
the two are on the ends, so it makes the sides longer.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hey, George.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. I
So-
know it
Yeah, I
felt
know,
different,
it
but
felt
I didn't
different,
know why.
right.
I think so. Well, the service went a little bit longer. I added in an element that took a little bit more time. So, but that's what we needed to do.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
anyway, I want to make sure we have the gallery mode. I love seeing Laura. And I want to see everybody else.
I didn't realize my face was that huge. I had taken off the spotlight.
It's nice
So.
to see who else is on here.
Yeah,
Yay.
you have a beautiful face. It's just that
Aw,
you see all the other beautiful faces.
We're always happy to see you.
exactly.
Joyce, have you already kind of started?
No, we're
No,
not.
because we felt like with church going on,
Right, right.
we needed to wait. We've been chatting a little bit, but with introductions and everything, we thought we'd wait till everybody was here.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Good plan.
Has everybody done introductions though, or do we?
No.
still- we need
No,
to do-
no.
Okay,
No, we
so
haven't
why
done
don't we
that
start
either.
with Zoom? Who's on Zoom? Why don't you go around and say who you are?
Here, I'll spotlight everybody. Let's start with Janet.
Yeah.
Hi, Janet.
Hi, Janet.
Are you on? Can you hear us, Janet? Janet, can you hear us? Oh,
Uh-oh.
uh-oh. I'm not, Laura, have you been able to talk to Janet?
Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, we talked a little bit.
Okay. Well, let's come back to
Here,
Janet.
yeah. Let's go to Kim because she knows the drill.
Kim, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. So Kim Reed, nice to see everyone this morning.
And then we'll go to Carolyn.
Could Kim introduce Janet since we're not able to hear Janet right now?
Oops, sorry, hold on. Go for it,
Yeah,
Kim.
sure. So Janet is a good friend of mine from the League of Women Voters of Illinois. We both served on the issues specialist, issues and advocacy committee, and she's an issues specialist, or had been for, gosh, so many years. I mean, we go way back, and I can't even remember how many years ago.
Well,
For 12, yeah, a long time.
plus,
And Janet has covered healthcare issues for the state of Illinois, and especially reproductive rights, because that's been front and center. So she's always been my go-to person regarding these issues, and it's just really nice to have her here because she's also a fellow Episcopalian from St. Charles Episcopal Church in St. Charles. So glad to have you here, Janet. So Janet, we're going to go around and everyone kind of introduces themselves on Zoom and then around the table, and then we'll get started.
And Janet, can you hear us now?
Janet, can you hear the people from in the room?
Yes, okay,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Okay. All right, good. All
Let's
right,
go
we'll
to,
go around then on others on Zoom. Carolyn, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy to be
Morning.
here. Looking forward to the topic.
It comes right back. Yeah, good to see you.
and then we're going to Robert Ward. Sorry, Robert.
Bob Ward. Good to see everybody. Thank you for having me.
And Judy.
Judy Johnson and neighbor of Bob Ward.
Right. Hi, Judy. How are you?
Let's go to Naomi.
Naomi Pridgeon, pleased to be here with you this morning.
And yes, that will bridge nicely because we'll go to David, who is also at the table, and we can bridge right in.
Wait, I'm here, even though I'm
Oh,
invisible.
who did I miss?
Cecilia,
Cecilia,
invisible.
you
I'm
are invisible.
and I tried to get my camera, but it's okay, because I'm gonna shower between this and the service, so you don't need to see me.
Sorry, we love you, Cecilia.
And I'm here. My hair is sticking up straight on end though, so it's fine that you don't see. Okay, David looks much better than I do right now.
You gotta turn your audio off.
Oops.
Well, it's more than that. And you're gonna have to exit and come back in. Yeah, David's gotta take care of his Zoom. So to leave Zoom and come back.
Oh, okay. Well, before I leave, I'm David Fletcher.
You're actually going to stay with us
Oh.
in the room, so yeah.
You've got it. He's gotta exit Zoom so that there isn't this echo. You gotta exit out of it.
Yeah,
What happens is if people have their audio not correct, it creates this echo.
now I'm muted, so that's okay.
Yeah, I kind of
Oh,
did
that'll
that.
help. That'll help, okay.
Anyway, I'm David Fletcher. I taught bioethics for 40 years. My doctoral dissertation in philosophy was on medical ethics at University of Illinois at Urbana. And I've been in St. Mark's forever. And that's my wife. How are you?
I'm Joyce Fletcher.
I'm Sue Bylander.
So let's go to Lindsay. So the problem with our video is that it's a little bit, we don't have the whole. So Lindsay, if you want to maybe step in front.
Hi, I'm Lindsay.
Hi.
I am Miguel.
I'm Diane.
And Edna.
And George Smith here. And then we have the Peanut Gallery, which is, oh, there you go. Look at that. Peanut Gallery, introduce yourselves.
Okay, there they are.
Kevin,
Ashley.
Chip, and Josh.
Yay.
Well, this is a wonderful turnout for this important topic. And part of the thing is, what can we accomplish in now in 45 minutes? And the answer is something. We can accomplish something, and we've got kind of three angles here to look at. One is the Episcopal Church and how it has approached this topic. One is kind of the ethical viewpoint, and then Janet has got some legal perspectives, and then really we want to have a conversation. So we're not going to do this big long lecture, but each of us can maybe answer, as we have a conversation, we can bring in our, what we know. So I just want to take a few minutes to talk about the Episcopal Church. I've got a handout here, and we can get it to those on Zoom. We can email it to you later here, just sending this around. So the Episcopal Church has an office of public policy, and what it does is it puts out what the Episcopal Church is its general convention passes, resolutions and so forth. So the issue of abortion and women's reproductive health has been an issue. And just a little bit of background, I mean, the Episcopal Church takes the experience of its churches, its clergy, its laity, its friends, and puts this into prayer and comes up with policies that we feel are important for others to know about, including our elected officials. So in the church's life, this issue has been important, and there are a few things just to say. One is the Episcopal Church teaches, first of all human life is sacred. It is sacred from inception until death. That's a statement. But we also say that, here, let me just, there's a really a good statement here. We express our deep conviction that any proposed legislation on the part of national or state governments regarding abortions must take special care to see that the individual conscience is respected, and that the responsibility of individuals to reach informed decisions in this matter is acknowledged and honored as the position of this church. It also says the diversity of views within the church represent our common struggle to understand and discern this issue. I think the Episcopal Church is clear. This is a very important and difficult topic, and we struggle to discern or articulate kind of our position. But it's clear that abortion is not a means of birth control. We've said that, but it is an option that we believe is something that a woman and the people around her should be able to choose. So I guess I just want to say that those few words, and we can go into more of the opinion, but the Episcopal Church is, I would say it's pro-choice and pro-life. So David, do you want to offer a few reflections on the ethical view?
I do indeed.
Wait, Josh.
So the word inception is interesting. From Inception, and I'm thinking of the movie.
Oh, right.
Do they mean, is this like a quasi-technical term that's supposed to be like fertilization? Or is it a theological, broad kind of whenever it starts?
So you have done a really good job of like naming something about the Episcopal Church, is that language matters, and sometimes we don't define it, but inception has some broadness to it, right? And that's intentional.
Conception would be a very specific.
Right, yeah.
I think it goes back to our first introduction to the Episcopal Church, when the rector said, people can't really be in the Episcopal Church unless they're comfortable with ambiguity.
Sure.
I mean, they're certainly welcome.
Right.
But, they might
but they're not comfortable.
They might not have a good time.
Right.
I just have a few things to share. This is an issue where there's a lot of division, right? There are people who are very strongly anti-abortion, and people who are very strongly pro-choice, and we're sort of at this position. We were out I think in Colorado, where we saw the two rams with their horns locked.
Right, and what were they, elks in Rocky Mountain National
Neither one
Park?
moved, but every once in a while you hear a squeak as their horns were rubbing. And so I think some of the ethical questions are, what is the right decision for a person to make? Every individual has to determine what their ethical position is on what they ought to do. Is it permissible to use contraception? Is it permissible to get an abortion? Things of that sort. And then the question which has been more on our minds lately is, who gets to actually make the decision? Does the individual and their physician get to make the decision? Is it your faith leaders, people maybe in Rome or something, or Wheaton, or maybe your state legislature? I mean, who gets to decide what gets to happen in your body? And again, do you have a right to use contraception? That was very controversial early in the 20th century.
And can I say that in the 1930s, the Episcopal Church endorsed or that condoned the use of contraception.
Yeah, there you go. And then do you have a right to ask your physician to assist you in ending your pregnancy, which is unwanted or is medically unsafe? So those are questions.
Oh my God.
Pardon? Oh, quick word on abortion in the US. Abortion has been going on forever. It was primarily seen as a private matter, and then as medicine became more institutionalized, they became involved with the abortion. It used to be something done at home. So anyway, by 1973, most states allowed abortion under some circumstances. But in 1973, the US Supreme Court made a federal decision that abortion is a constitutional right. So this right has been in existence for 50 years. It was the year I graduated from college. I remember it well. I remember discussing it with friends at the time. Currently, about 18% of pregnancies that don't end in miscarriage and in abortion. About half of pregnancies are unwanted, and somewhat less than half of those end up in abortion. So in a recent year, we had approximately 862,320 abortions, and it's been going down pretty steadily over the years since 1973. It used to be close to 2 million, now it's under 1 million. The anti-abortion argument is obvious. It's wrong to take an innocent human life. And abortion takes an innocent human life. So therefore abortion is wrong. And it's wrong in a way that it's not just individually you shouldn't do it, but it has to be, the unborn have to be protected by law. Because it's a very serious taking of human life on that view. Now, of course, what do we mean by human life? And there's been a lot of debate about that. Most people will agree it's wrong to take innocent human life, but the second point, does abortion actually take a human life in the sense that we mean it in the first premise? So this is a picture I took with my camera phone, 2 blocks from our house, St. Michael's Church. The Knights of Columbus put this marble monument there to unborn children, and they quote one of the verses I want to talk about, Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And that's one of the scripture passages that is very often taken to establish a strong right to life in scripture. But of course, it's really important that you be a fetus, not a former fetus, right? So here we're at the Right to Life Convention, and nobody's helping this guy who thinks former fetus is going to help. The pro-choice argument, of course, is a woman has a right to control her own body. We all do. It's an essential human right, is the right to make decisions about your own body. And abortion is an exercise of that control. So therefore, a woman has a moral and should have a legal right to an abortion. So you can read that perhaps.
Can you actually, I know it spoils it to read it, but would you?
So the man's holding a sign, ban partial birth abortion, and he's tapping the pregnant woman's tummy and saying, we're only concerned with saving your life. And she's by the women's health clinic, and she says, what about mine? This is, we can do this quickly, but this is a recent survey from the Pew Foundation. What do Americans think about this? This is, what, a few years ago now, but 25% would say it should be legal in all cases, and another, 35 or so percent say it should be legal in most cases. And the smallest number here is on the right, illegal in all cases is it has the least support. But
so the in Christian Century, they had that illegal in all cases was 8%.
Yeah,
that was the issue that arrived in my mail yesterday.
good. Yeah,
So 8% say illegal in all cases.
So Americans generally favor abortion, but it is clearly a divisive issue. This shows that white evangelical Protestants are most likely to say illegal in all cases. That's the light blue bar. The Roman Catholics are actually much more in favor of abortion than evangelicals are. The blue line there, which is supporting it, is higher. White mainline Protestants would be higher than that, and then unaffiliated would have the most support for that. So it does seem to be a decision or a position that is very much influenced by religious perspectives. Then this is just percentage of adults who say abortion should be legal by age. That doesn't seem to vary too much. It's pretty much the same between various age groups. But education has a big impact. College graduates or more are the most likely to think it should be legal in all cases. So this is the predicament that a lot of women are in. The line has turned blue. I was looking at a commercial on TV recently. I wasn't fast forwarding through it. I actually watched it. And it was for a pregnancy test. And there was a woman who said, someday maybe, but not now. She's really hoping the pregnancy test turns out negative. And someone else, oh, we're finally this is our chance to have a baby. We're hoping it'll be positive. And women obviously have various different life circumstances. What do? Well, you have adoption, motherhood, or abortion being your main options there. Just a quick word about this, because I think it's relevant. 2/3 of abortions occur at 8 weeks of pregnancy or earlier. Now, for reference, at 8 weeks, the embryo is less than an inch. It's 0.63 inches and 0.04 ounces, and is the size of a raspberry. So the signs may show babies and so on, but we're really talking mostly about early embryos. When you get to, so that's the large blue part of the circle there. When you get to after the 21st week, it's only 1.3%. Women who are pregnant that long want to have a baby. Religion and abortion, obviously, for many Christians, being anti-abortion or pro-life, as they would call it, is a central Christian belief and practice.
Just do this, minimize this so we can, so on the screen here.
Oh, I see. Yes, I could do that, I think.
Can you?
Yeah.
Click on that. There you go. Oh, no, you know what? It's the,
Oh, it's up
it's the
there.
other one.
It's the other one, okay. So the legal issue, the reason this is a legal issue is because of strong religious sentiment in certain parts of the population. And again, for many Christians, Roman Catholic, evangelical, and others, you have to be anti-abortion or you're not really Christian, or there's a defect in your Christian position. You see that in this chart too. So total US population, roughly split, but more likely to be legal. That's the left side of that vertical line here. Jewish are most likely to support that, followed by Buddhists, other faiths, other Christians, unaffiliated, Hindus, mainline Protestants, and so on. But
Move along.
okay, so you got that.
Just because
So what do they base their claims on? Well, and I want to talk about this a little bit. The interpretation of key scriptural passages is the most important thing. What does the Bible say about abortion? Well, it's surprising, I think, considering how important this is to so many people, that the Bible never forbids it. It's not even mentioned in Scripture. So where do people get this? Well, there are a few poetic verses that people think have implications for this position. So Psalm 139 is a major one. You created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and so on. And you can look that up, Psalm 139, 13 through 16. Beautiful psalm about how God was involved with my life before I even came to be. Let's see here. Psalm 51, surely I was sinful at birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me. Well, then I must have been a person. I must have been an individual at conception. This is where why a lot of people think that conception is the place to draw the line. And then Jeremiah 1:5, which is on that monument. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. But scripturally, life is said to begin at first breath, not at conception. At least in the Old Testament, which is the only place it's really discussed, you become a person when you breathe. Adam became a person who was alive when he breathed. Oops, went the wrong way. In Ezekiel, that the great passage about the dry bones, it's when they have breath in them that they are alive. Now, there's an interesting passage that a lot of people aren't aware of from Numbers. So apparently in those days, occasionally people were unfaithful in their marriages. I know it's shocking that was true in those days. That's how barbaric they were. But by the way, it's our 46th anniversary today. But if a man suspects that his wife has gotten pregnant by somebody else, what do you do? Now nobody saw them or anything to get her with somebody else, but he thinks that they did. So God says, here's what you do. You guys go to the priest and he mixes up this potion out of some kind of dust or something. And if she has been unfaithful, then she will be under a curse by drinking this stuff. And he makes your womb miscarry and your abdomen swell. May this water that brings a curse enter your body so that your abdomen swells or your womb miscarries. And the woman says, amen, so be it. That's interesting, right? And that's decreed by God in that passage. The passage that actually deals with causing the death of the unborn is Exodus 21, 22 through 25. And it's a weird situation. There's a couple of guys fighting. A pregnant woman gets somehow involved, and then one of them punches her and she miscarries. And here's how most translations treat this. If men contend or fight with each other, and a pregnant woman interfering is hurt, so she has a miscarriage, but no further damage follows, the one who hurt her shall be punished with a fine paid to the woman's husband, of course, as much as the judges determine. There's a very similar passage in the Code of Hammurabi and the Hittite laws of that era. So that seems to be how things were handled in those days, and it's true of scripture. Which means that the penalty for causing the accidental death of an unborn baby is less than the penalty for causing the death of an adult human being. So for the baby, there's a fine. For the mother, there's death. And that's how Judaism interprets it. Rashi, the 12th century commentator on the Bible and Talmud, says of the fetus, lav nefesh hu, it is not a person. The Talmud contains the expression uber yerek imo. The fetus is as the thigh of its mother, it's part of her body. And in fact, Judaism requires that a woman whose life is in jeopardy because of her pregnancy should abort the fetus, ethically. The NIV translates it differently. This is a very popular Bible among evangelicals. And so the way they have it is if men are fighting hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, but there's no serious injury, the offender is fined for causing that. But if there's serious injury to the woman, then you take his life. But nobody else interprets it this way. But you can see how this was, was motivated by certain positions that were popular in the evangelical world. And in the footnotes, it says, or has a miscarriage, which is the other view. That's all I'm going to say about this for now. So scripture, people think that it clearly teaches that abortion is wrong, but it's certainly open to interpretation. Yeah, I'm done. Who else wants to talk? Janet?
Yeah, let's do. Thank you, David. That's really, really interesting and great.
Thank you very much.
So Janet, let's see, we need to,
I need to not be sharing my
Yeah, you
screen.
need to
Right.
stop
So it
sharing.
should be up at the top.
There we go.
Just a second, we'll,
Not share. Stop share. Here we go.
there we go. So Janet, can you hear us?
Okay, I'm pleased to be with you this morning. I'm a member of the St. Charles Episcopal Church, but relative to our discussion, I have a background in healthcare. I served as CEO of a community health nonprofit in a medically underserved area. And when I retired, I looked for ways to continue my commitment for access to healthcare, including reproductive health. It was then that I met another Episcopalian who has a passion for immigrant rights, Kim Reed, who is here today. With the leak of the Supreme Court draft that would repeal Roe versus Wade, 26 states are likely to follow suit, including 12 with trigger laws that would make abortion illegal were Roe overturned. But Illinois, since 2017, has a trigger law that protects legal abortion if Roe is repealed. And in the past 5 years, Illinois law has affirmed abortion protections and rights. In addition to the trigger law one, in 2019, the Illinois Reproductive Health Act repealed outdated and unconstitutional prohibitions on reproductive health care. And it regulates abortion like any other form of health care. It repealed the Illinois abortion law of 1975 and the long-blocked Partial Birth Abortion Act, enjoined by the courts as unenforceable. And it takes abortion out of the criminal code. It repeals felony penalties imposed on doctors for offering abortion care and some contraceptives. Additionally, the law provides that every individual possesses fundamental rights with respect to reproductive health with limited government interference. And what this means, there is no trimester or other specification for an abortion other than they be consistent with accepted standards of medical care. And something that I found that is of interest to this, the American College of OBGYN has an abortion policy that they review almost annually. And it is very consistent with the Illinois law. In addition, this law requires insurance companies to provide coverage for abortions on the same basis as contraception and maternity care, and expands requirement for private insurance as well as state employees and Medicare. And incidentally, since the passage of this law, each legislative session, there has been a bill filed to repeal the law. None of these bills came to a vote. And lastly, there was a law that has been extremely controversial for over 25 years. There was the repeal of the parental notice before a minor can have an abortion. And it becomes effective this coming week, June 1st. The prior law was in litigation since 1995. Interestingly, it had a judicial bypass provision where a minor could appear before a judge with permission to obtain an abortion. And that bypass provision was used over the years over 500 times. I must say that I was really very interested in Joyce and David's slides, and it really tells the story of what I've experienced and working on reproductive health. And so thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. Well, we've kind of looked at three different angles. We've seen kind of what the Episcopal Church believes or has stated, and David has given some great statistics and then scripture references. And Janet, you've given us some Illinois, where we are as a state. So then it's really I mean, the purpose of this was to have people have statements or questions, opinions. This would be a great conversation. We don't have a whole lot of time, but where are we as a group on this topic? Are we all of one mind or not?
I'd like to bring up the topic of reproductive health education because people tell me these days there's sex education in school. I don't have any children around me from whom I've been able to learn what it's like, except for my teenagers in a Montessori school where it's very good. And I remember that the church used to have a youth program called Right 13, which was to introduce the teenage youth to adult life, but I don't know what the content was. I happen not to be in that cycle myself. Looking at what's about to happen, I think we're back at a time when women, specifically people who get pregnant, are going to have to take it into our own hands. But every human ought to have some understanding of human reproduction, and there's a lot of medical knowledge about it nowadays, including all kinds of things. My son, who has worked in pink collar industries all of his life, tells me that he was surprised when he was a flight attendant to discover that his fellow flight attendants were just as surprised as I had been before he was born, when their doctor said, "Oh, miscarriage is quite normal. It happens in many pregnancies." And, you know, even that simple thing, which is very much at issue here. So I think education is important, and I think quite possibly churches ought to be the place where children get reproductive education. And one of my grandchildren has recommended a supplement I have placed in the church library, both in Spanish and in English. Our bodies, ourselves, nuestros cuerpos. My Spanish is never up to it.
Nuestros mismos? I don't know.
But both of those books are here, and my grandchild has recommended, and I have ready to join them, trans bodies, trans cells, which they recommend from their own experience. And that's education. That is not advocacy. It is to learn, to understand.
I find it kind of interesting that
So Ashley is speaking from the peanut gallery side.
So I was a biology major, also studied bioethics, and I do find it kind of interesting that although we haven't defined death as the absence of a heartbeat for decades, a lot of people want to use, quote, a heartbeat to define when life begins, which at that point it isn't even a heartbeat, right? There's not a heart yet. It's a small electrical impulse, which is technically all a heartbeat is anyway, even though a heart is fully formed, but it's just kind of interesting the inconsistency of that.
So death is, there is no heartbeat, or no,
No.
it's brain
Right,
functioning.
right? Like to do a heart transplant, you must take a beating heart out of one
Right.
body
Right.
and put it into another. So because we wanted to do heart transplants, we redefined the way we define
And,
that.
and are there people who are against that? Do you know?
Against heart transplants?
Yeah.
Too many.
I mean, are there?
It's not popular, but there are some.
Yeah. But we don't have an outpouring of public outcry over that. It doesn't seem that is all. But that's a really interesting kind of double standard, right?
Yeah, that we choose to say it's.
Well, so I studied embryology, and it takes much longer for the brain to develop than the heart.
So if we were defining life as when brain activity began, it would be much
later,
yeah.
Why isn't the basis sex education? Why isn't that's what starts all this? Why in the world can we not discuss sex in all of its ramifications? It seems that
We're very puritanical, I think, on that. We don't want to say anything about it. We don't want to.
It's interesting if you even compare American like television and movies to European. Europeans are much more comfortable with open sexuality, but not near as comfortable with all the violence and gunshots and so forth that Americans are comfortable with.
Kim, did you have a?
Yeah, I just want to, bring up another aspect to this, which is sexism, is control over women. And for so long, the church and religious institutions, were led by men. Our laws, women didn't have rights. They didn't have rights over their own bodies. They didn't have property. They didn't, if they left their spouses, the children were the property of the men. And it seems to me that a lot of control over abortion and sex and everything else has been, this result of a patriarchal society and religions. And I think that continues. We see that today. It continues that, these very groups that want freedom, they don't want it for women, and they don't want it for anything that presses up against, male headship. So.
I have to be free not to have to wear a mask, in the height of the pandemic. It's my body, my choice.
Well, and given, the recent continuing gun violence and mass shootings and seeing, 2 horrific incidences, you can't call yourself pro-life and not say you're against, having guns. So I don't know. I'm just so frustrated, and there's just so much to be, upset about. And this, to me, it's all related. It's all connected.
Josh.
I have a question for Janet, and I'm sitting off camera.
Why don't you come, if you can come into camera, that would be great.
Sure. I'll just walk back there. Yeah, I have a legal question. Do you know how many decisions are either hinged by lower courts or higher courts about individual bodily autonomy that may have precedent in Roe? I'm under the impression that there are a lot. And that would make me concerned if the precedent was overturned, if all these other questions about, in various other realms about bodily autonomy would also be put into question. Does anybody know?
Yes.
Right, so I was wondering if Janet had any comment on that.
So I'm just not sure that the audio is working properly with Janet. Does anybody else have an answer to that question?
Well, when you're dead, they can't go into your body to take organs unless you previously consented or a loved one consented. So there's bodily autonomy even when you're dead. If you can't be forced to give a kidney to somebody, no matter how badly they need it, I think the law for a long time has just assumed that you have that authority over your body. It can't be put to somebody else's use. But apparently not here.
So Josh, you asked an interesting question though about the lower courts versus the higher courts, saying that, can you, I'm trying to understand your question again.
My main question is how many decisions have been made by courts using Roe as precedent for bodily autonomy, specifically that line?
So that if Roe is overturned, then you get this cascade of all these other things are put into question.
The thing with Roe is that we look at it and think that it's about bodily autonomy, which to a degree it is, but it is ultimately about privacy.
Yes.
Okay.
About your right to privacy. So the overturning of Roe is going to impact a lot of it's a lot.
Yeah, Janet just texted that or sent a message. The audio from the room is unclear to her. So Janet, the question was, is if Roe is and step in, Josh, if I have it wrong. If Roe is overturned by the Supreme Court, what about lower court rulings? What kind of impact is that going to have on bodily autonomy? Are we concerned? Are we worried about that?
And not just abortion, everything, anything else in his body.
I mentioned the trigger law in Illinois, and I would say that it really depends on maybe the next election. It certainly, the law was passed, and it could be overturned. But as of now, Illinois has that protection.
And can somebody explain the trigger principle? I'm not sure I understand.
Janet, can you explain the trigger, what that is?
The trigger concept.
Oh, okay.
It goes right back.
It was sort of in my oral presentation, but a trigger law and a number of cases in states means that if the Roe is overturned by the Supreme Court, then abortion would become illegal, depending on their state law, either immediately or within a specified period of time. However, the Illinois trigger law, which is also referred to as a firewall for abortion, means that if the Supreme Court does repeal Roe, Illinois still has abortion that is legal in the state.
Now, a very important thing
Okay,
happened in 1965.
Is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, all right.
In 1965,
Sorry, yeah.
it was still illegal in two
No,
states.
I really had trouble hearing people on the side, and so just alert me if there's anything.
Okay. Thank you. Do you want to say again?
Yeah, in 1960, up until 1965, contraception was still illegal in Connecticut and Massachusetts. And the Connecticut case was tried at the Supreme Court level, and the decision is Griswold versus Connecticut, which says that the right to privacy encompasses the right to make reproductive decisions, at least within marriage. And that's actually one of the things that apparently Alito's decision is attacking, the idea that there's a right to privacy at all. And so that would mean that maybe contraception could become illegal. It probably has implications for gay marriage as well. So it could be, I mean, I think Josh is onto something. This could be the beginning of a slippery slope where a lot of rights go away.
I have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Wait 1 second. Just Kevin was going to say something and then we'll go to the Zoom. Yeah, what were you saying?
When you attack the right to privacy for things that happen to you as well,
They could end up, instead of having a national registry of sex offenders, a national registry of sex victims of sexual abuse and rape and stuff. And then you have a list of vulnerable people out there for, be targets. It doesn't really end. And I think I've always kind of viewed this, now that I know more of the history of the debate, that abortion itself is more of like a red herring or like this big front thing for trying to reclaim space in a fight that's already been lost by a group that wants to own and control the people. Slave owners were here from the beginning of this nation and still have a lot of generational authority and philosophy that has been passed down with people who have power. They feel like they are not only entitled to, but should be able to control the behaviors and the bodies of other people based upon some intrinsic value of themselves. And when you no longer have the ability to segregate, you no longer have the ability to do all of those things, then the discussion goes, okay, well, then we're going to switch it over to abortion and reproductive rights. So if I can't control where you are, I get to control when you are. And I think if you take the fight to the, or not the fight, but like the discussion and the arguments down to its basis level, it is more fundamental to the problems that have been plaguing this country from the beginning, as opposed to just the past 50 years. Well, and to that point, there's a book called The Power Worshippers. It might be Karen Armstrong. She is a investigative reporter. It was just published.
Okay.
But she's got transcripts, and she has found from audio or text about political leaders of the early moral majority movements interacting with kind of old Republicans and trying to reinvigorate against the 1960s liberation movements. And one of their points was, how do we get evangelical Protestants and Roman Catholics to actually vote the same way?
Yeah.
And they said, we can build this as a political issue.
Right.
So you're totally right. And
So
this
what
is
is that
another,
called?
the Power Worshippers.
So I do want to go to Zoom because somebody was going to make a comment.
It was me. It's Cecilia, the unwashed. What Ashley said about life beginning with brain activity, like the two definitions of death and life, to me, that is huge. And I hadn't heard that before or made the connection before. And I just wonder, when I think about these laws being, or the whole concept being discussed, I see this in my head, this role of old white men. And I'm wondering, has this been brought up? Has this been part? I guess I think when I see these rows of old white men, I think there's no discussion like we're having now, no discussion. They're just proclaiming at certain weeks, this and that. But is, Ashley, what you said, is that raised enough? Is it part of the discussion and awareness enough in this issue? Because this was a thing that's huge to me, realizing today.
This is the problem with people who lack even an elementary understanding of basic human biology, making policy decisions that affect the human body. It's also the reason why certain states are proposing legislation that ectopic pregnancies cannot be, quote, aborted or surgically removed. They have to be like re-implanted, which is impossible. Right. And it's why, so making it, personal, I had a miscarriage in January at 8 weeks. I took progesterone because my progesterone levels were low. Because of that, the embryo was firmly implanted into my body. My body was not going to release that. My options at that point, well, I was hemorrhaging, so I didn't really have options. But normally the options at that point are, you wait for it to pass and hope it passes, which if it doesn't, and it often doesn't, then you either have to have surgery, a DNC, which is the same procedure used in abortion, or you take drugs, which is the morning after pill. So states that are outlawing the morning after pill and going after not just quote abortion, but the DNC procedure itself is guaranteeing women are going to die, right? The embryo, the fetus will calcify, the woman will become septic, and she will die. Horrifically and painfully in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, and that's taking what's already a difficult.
Right.
Right.
Emotional
Emotional
situation. I
situation.
wanted my pregnancy.
Right.
You know? And I walked away from that feeling just a slight tinge of guilt because my whole life it's been pounded into me. Oh,
Right. Yep.
abortion is bad, evil, wrong, like the worst thing you can do. And even though that isn't technically what happened, same surgery.
so I'm gonna actually, I mean, you know, having this topic is tough because there's so much discuss. I mean, even the education idea, you know, the angle that Edna brought up to the biology, and I mean, it's a lot. So, and it's 10 o'clock, which means we have to stop. I'm wondering, you know, so we're gonna have conversation and coffee next Sunday at 9 o'clock. So this conversation could certainly continue. And for those on Zoom, you know, there could be more talking. So if you'd like to come back next week, the conversation can continue. So I don't know if that makes sense, Joyce.
Sure, we hadn't planned on having Zoom part of the coffee and conversation, but we could do that.
Yeah, I mean, is that Laura?
Is that something that
is that
people
something
would
you
be
can-
interested in?
Laura,
Oh, yeah.
Coffee though, we
Yeah.
can't give you coffee.
We'll
You
DoorDash
say that,
coffee
but
to you.
I think if you
Sweet
tried
rolls.
hard enough.
Sweet
So-
roll and a cup of coffee.
Would it have to
Well,
be a different Zoom number?
No, be the same one. Well, yeah, because
Because
we're not gonna be live streaming the 9th.
Oh,
Yeah, so it can be the same Zoom number. Janet, thank you so much
Thank you,
for being
Janet.
with us. Appreciate it. And, again, I know it's a little bit of a frustrating end, but we knew we were gonna have to stop at 10, so.